Welcome to Egyptian Mysticism Yesterday, A Course in Miracles Today, a 365-step journey to enlightenment, guided by Dr. Carolyne Fuqua.
Step 1. Wake up this morning being willing not to know yourself. Realize that whatever assignations you make are not coming from what is true and relevant today, but rather from something you learned, heard about, or experienced in some other place at some other time, and are probably holding guilt over. You may have noticed that it is possible for two or more people to be looking at the same thing, but are seeing something completely different. We might ask then, is seeing a function of sight or of beliefs that might need to be addressed? Remember, today, nothing I see, no matter where I look, means anything. Step 2. We each create our own reality. We decide what and how to think in every situation in which we find ourselves. And what and how we think about an event affects the way we feel and how we respond in every moment. We each made decisions about events that occurred in our formative years, 0 to 7, and believe those decisions to be truths rather than simply our experience. Then we walk through our lives believing that others or ourselves are wrong if we disagree. What I think is important may be trivial to you, and vice versa. No matter what your response actually is, I only hear and thus respond to what I believe you are thinking and saying. In other words, I live out of the drama that goes on in my head, one that often has nothing to do with what is actually going on in the space. Identified as our circumstances, it is really easy to feel victimized rather than at cause in our lives. Since I have given everything I see all the meaning that it has for me, today I'm willing to be present to new possibilities. Step 3. Today, I am willing to be wrong about every decision I have made about everything. I am willing to be wrong even if every once in a while it turns out that I'm right. I realize that I am making up meaning, and if what I have decided is destroying my peace, I am willing to let it go. There is a bigger picture behind the one I am making up, and the only way I will be able to see it is if my need to supply meaning is relinquished. No matter what the circumstances, I do not understand anything I see. Step 4. Until we are ready to be peaceful, we are constantly thinking. One can be consumed by thoughts of how he or she might protect him or herself from all of the mostly imagined dangers lurking not too far off, or of how a more satisfying circumstance might be achieved. Our subconscious storehouses are filled with memories of atrocities we have committed, or of blessings we believe we have been denied, and too many of our thoughts are generated from that place. As we proceed in our journey, the storehouse of our mental body is in desperate need of clearing out. Just like the things I see, the thoughts I have do not mean anything. Step 5. Until properly addressed, our bodies are covered with buttons. Buttons that seem constantly to be pushed by people and situations, activating emotions and causing feelings to be hurt. Where do these buttons come from, and how long will we allow ourselves to be controlled by them? One thing is certain. They will have to be deactivated, and our emotional bodies will have to be cleared if we are to make the progress we desire. And to do this, we are going to have to pay attention. Today, I start to realize that I am never upset for the reason I think. Step 6. I am pure, I am pure, I am pure, I am pure. My attention remains focused on my willingness to clear the illusions from my lower bodies. I have for lifetimes been amassing beliefs that cloud my vision, making it impossible for me to experience the present. What is actually happening right here, right now. All you said was, "Why did you do it that way?" And instead of recognizing your interest in my process, what I heard was, "That was a stupid way to do it." And now I'm beginning to realize that I'm upset because I see something that is not there. Step 7. I realize that creating only occurs in present time, and dwelling in the past keeps me from knowing or having a real relationship with anything. I stop discovering and inventing once I lock down on the way I've done it before and believe that this is the only way it can be done. This reminds me of the story about the mother who cuts the ends of her ham off as she prepares to bake it. When her daughter asked her why she did this, she said because that was the way her mother did it. The daughter then asked her grandmother why she did and was given the same answer. Determined to get to the bottom of this practice, the girl then asked her great-grandmother. The mystery was finally solved when the great-grandmother disclosed that that was the only way it would fit the small pan she had at her disposal. I am amazed at how limited I am when I realize that I see only the past. Step 8. Today we continue with the Egyptian teaching that the vehicle must be purified if spirit is to take the wheel. And if I am to succeed at anything, spirit is going to have to drive this vehicle. I notice that I'm filled to the brim, completely consumed by thoughts of what happened last year, last month, last week, yesterday. Thoughts about money, relationships, health, religious upbringing, and hard times in general crowd my mind. How, I ask you, could I ever experience the possible beauty of the moment when my mind is so preoccupied with past thoughts? Step 9. In Egyptian mysticism, we are taught that when we are consumed with past thoughts, we are blind and seriously in need of the healing that only comes with an understanding of universal law. When I cloud my vision with beliefs formed as a result of past actions, I am completely blind to what is right in front of me, and I see nothing as it is now. Step 10. If my thoughts are all coming from a place that doesn't exist, the past for instance, how then can they mean anything? Actually, is spinning in a mire of made-up madness really to be called thinking? And does what I'm calling thinking have anything to do with true thought? If while meditating I am planning dinner or working out a closing argument, am I thinking or strategizing for safety? Egyptian mysticism would proffer that true thought comes from the higher self, and what I'm doing is entertaining my ego, which offers the illusion of lack. Therefore, I must conclude my thoughts don't mean anything. Step 11. In Egyptian mysticism, we are taught that there are two places inside of which it is possible for one to stand or to position himself: in kingdom or spiritual consciousness, or in worldly consciousness. Spiritual consciousness is symbolized by a white crown that looks like a bowling pin, and worldly consciousness is symbolized by a red crown that resembles a soup ladle. The white crown is filled with information about the truth of who we are, that is, the image and likeness of God, whole, perfect, and complete. And the red crown, designed to be context or vehicle for the white, should be empty if not utilized for its rightful purpose. However, since we have choice as to where we place our focus, we are able to align our thinking with the truth, or, as is most often the case, we can choose to align with the meaningless, the illusion of lack in any or all areas, finances, health, and relationships, for example. And since what I think is outpictured in the world around me, my meaningless thoughts are showing me a meaningless world. Step 12. In Egyptian mysticism, we learn the principles or laws that create and sustain the universe. The most important of these is the law of mentalism, which explains that everything manifest or materialized is the result of a thought. If I don't know the truth about myself, which is that I am the image and likeness of God, I am going to see myself as devoid of meaning. If I see myself as devoid of meaning, my thoughts and thus my world will reflect that, and the world I see will be filled with pain, suffering, and lack, which will keep me in a constant state of upset. And indeed, I am upset because I see a meaningless world. Step 13. When I feel separate and don't realize that I am one with everything, I believe that there is nothing anywhere unless I find it and put it there. There is no safety without locks, no abundance without money, and no love without sacrifice. When I turn away from the everything that is God, I turn toward nothingness. And since nothingness does not exist, this is a meaningless concept. The world of lack that I have thought into existence is truly meaningless. And a meaningless world definitely engenders fear. Step 14. The real world is God outpictured in form. All of the magnificence and beauty we can imagine is what God is, and thus what was projected from the nominal or invisible realm to the phenomenal or visible realm. It is filled with abundance and meaning everywhere I look. If it has no magnificence or meaning, God did not create it, because God did not create a meaningless world. Step 15. My thoughts are the film in my camera. They are projected on the screen that is my life. If my thoughts are meaningless, that is, not aligned with God's, the images will be meaningless even when they appear to me as real. If my thought is that there is never enough money, because of the law of mentalism, the images that appear on my screen will all center around lack. If my thought is that relationships don't work, I might attract one, but I won't be able to keep it. The image on my screen has to be of me sitting alone, wondering why I'm sitting alone. Because my thoughts are images I have made, all I will ever see is faulty thoughts projecting faulty images. Step 16. Based on the law of mentalism taught in ancient Egypt, all thoughts, whether meaningful or meaningless, have the power to manifest themselves. And all my thoughts are either meaningful, that is, based on what God created, or meaningless, based on what I made up aligned with my egoic, separated self. There is no in-between. Therefore, I have no neutral thoughts. Step 17. Since I can only see my thoughts outpictured as my circumstances, and since I have no neutral thoughts, it follows that I see no neutral things. Step 18. There is only one mind, and that mind is God's. We were all created as one thing out of the one mind, and that one thing is creation itself. We may appear as separate physically, but our mind and spirit are actually one. What I see outpictures a belief that I hold, and thus share as though it is the truth, not just what I made up. Because of the universal law of vibration, when you enter my auric field, our consciousnesses have to match in order for you to remain there. If I hold the image of abusive relationships, even if you have never been abusive in your life, when you are with me, you become abusive, because I am not alone in experiencing the effects of my seeing. Step 19. My images are thoughts outpictured. All thoughts, on some level, are shared and thus affect everyone and everything. All water on our planet is connected, as all minds are connected. As such, if a rock is thrown into the Amazon River, all of the water on the planet is affected. My toxic thoughts affect everyone and everything adversely, and my loving thoughts affect everyone and everything positively. And since I am not alone in experiencing the effects of my thoughts, and since there are no neutral thoughts, every moment, as a result of my choices, I am raising or lowering the whole vibratory field. Step 20. I am clear that my thoughts determine what I see. As a matter of fact, my thoughts determine whether I see or not. Because of varying perception, all looking is not true seeing. In Egyptian mysticism, Horace, the ascending soul, was blinded when he refused to see the truth about his relationship to Set, the ego. and his vision was restored only after he learned and applied universal law and accepted the truth about his identity as the image and likeness of God. I must learn and accept the truth about who I am because I am determined to see. Step 21. I must now ask myself and be painfully honest if I'm happy with what I'm experiencing in my life. Am I seeing lack or abundance, sickness or health, sadness or joy? Remembering the law of mentalism, I understand that what I am seeing has everything to do with how I'm thinking and how I'm being. And I realize that to see something different, I'm going to have to see things differently. And this I am determined to do. Step 22. As was previously mentioned in Egyptian mysticism, Horus represents the ascending soul in each one of us, and Set represents the ego of each one of us. We learn from these teachings that Horus and Set are constantly engaged in a battle for control, defending and attacking, attacking and defending. We know that there should be no battle, just an understanding of which aspect of ourselves was created to lead. It is clear that Horus was holding attack thoughts towards Set because he was blinded, representing his inability to see and thus uphold the truth. We know that he thought he was rightfully defending himself, but we also know that he did not yet have an understanding of universal law. When I don't realize that I make up and project whatever I see, it follows that what I see is a form of vengeance. Step 23. During Horus's battle with Set, not only was he not seeing clearly, ultimately he was not seeing at all. He had lost his eyes in the battle. Actually, he had lost his eyes because of the battle, and the only way he was able to heal his blindness was by learning the law of mentalism. That explains how the world you are attacking and defending is a product of your own thoughts. And by learning to think clearly, one is able to see clearly. After learning that he could escape from what he was experiencing by giving up attack thoughts, Horus's vision was restored, and it was possible for him to master Set, who, during the battle, symbolizes the uncontrolled ego. Step 24. In Egyptian mysticism, we learn that during Horus's battle with Set, he clearly did not perceive his own best interest. When not understanding her motives, he beheaded Isis, who symbolizes the Holy Spirit. Isis is responsible for teaching and guiding our hero to self-realization, and without her constant assistance, there can be no victory. However, since Horus's, our own, victory is assured, Isis reattaches her head and continues diligently, lovingly, leading the way. Step 25. Continuing with yesterday's theme, we understand that Horus was furious with Isis for not doing what would have been satisfying to him. Isis's goal was bigger than Horus's. She was invested in his winning the war that would guarantee his ascendancy and thus eternal peace, while he was only interested in carrying the day. Because he did not know what anything is for, he thought her actions were against him rather than the only thing for him. And in anger, he cut off her head. Beheading the Holy Spirit symbolizes us turning our backs on guidance and wandering blindly without direction. Step 26. All of my thoughts have power and do indeed create what I'm thinking about. When I hold attack thoughts, I am believing that I am justified and that I'm only defending myself from being attacked. However, the truth is that instead of passively reacting to perceived danger, I am actually, with my attack thoughts, creating the danger. I could be knowing that as the image and likeness of God, I was created in the light, as the light, and am therefore invulnerable and always safe. And then, based on the law of mentalism, that would be my experience. When, however, I believe that attack is justified, I have to be thinking I'm a victim, separate from the light, and thus my attack thoughts would actually be attacking my God-given invulnerability. Step 27. In Egyptian mysticism, we are taught that Horace, symbolizing each human soul, is blind when he does not know and utilize universal law, the rules and very foundation of the game of life. I understand that knowing the law will force me to be accountable for my life in a way that I may not have in the past been ready for. Identifying as a victim, I can blame others for my results and circumstances, and I don't have to be responsible for or change anything. I understand that vision comes with knowing and accepting the truth about who I am. And because I am now ready for that, above all else, I want to see. Step 28. The universal law of polarity says that everything in manifestation exists on a pole or continuum, and therefore there are always two possible ways of seeing what is in front of us. We can see things the way they were actually created to be, whole, perfect, and complete, or we can see things the way we made them up as the result of our past experiences and beliefs. In order for there to be true vision, we are going to have to be willing to be wrong about how we now see everything. What I think leads to what I see. What I see leads to what I believe. What I believe leads to my circumstances. And I am now ready to improve my circumstances. Therefore, above all else, I want to see things differently. Step 29. Everything in creation is an outpicturing of the mind of God, just as our thoughts are outpictured to become the sum of our experiences. God's thought or word became the sum of creation. There is nothing in existence that is separate from the thought and thus the mind and being of God. Everything is God, and what I think I see or experience as not God is an illusion that I made up and can thus transform back to its authentic state. No matter what I'm looking at, God is in everything I see. Step 30. Harkening back to the law of polarity, when I choose to turn toward the right end of the pole of being, which is what the ancient Egyptians taught represented egoic or worldly consciousness, my eyes are shut against the light and my mind appears empty and thus filled with a darkness I made up based on my separated thoughts and beliefs. However, when I turn toward the left end of the pole, I recognize my mind as part of the one mind that is God's and is thus flooded with kingdom or God consciousness, whole, perfect, and complete. I see the fullness and beauty and oneness of God in everything I see.